I want to give a special shout out to all my patrons first. Thank you so much to my Bibliospren, Bibliohowlers, and my Bibliomancers. It means a lot to me that you give me your extra support for my passion and hobby. Hi everyone, Petrik here. Today's video will be another book recommendation video. This will be about 10 short fantasy books, 10 amazing short fantasy books to recommend. First of all, what would I consider as short fantasy books? Novella usually, well, it's usually measured up to 50,000 word count. So above that, it is considered a short novel. I will start with that. In today's video, the 10 books that I will recommend, all of them will range from 60,000 words up to at most 120,000 words long. Not page count, because I think word count is a much more accurate measurement of how big a book is. And I like to consider every book that already reached 200,000 words long can be considered a big book. Above 300,000 words long, that's already a very big book, especially those that actually exceeded 400,000 words long, like some books in Stormlight Archive or To Green Angel Tower by Tad Williams. But here's the thing, I love reading big fantasy books. I personally prefer reading 200,000 words long up to 400,000 words long fantasy books. They tend, statistically, they tend to grant me the most satisfaction when they're incredible. But I cannot deny that we do need short fantasy books as well. And this is not me saying that short fantasy books sucks. It is not that at all. It is just, for me, statistically, it is much more difficult to find a satisfying short fantasy books. That's for me anyway. But I do know there are many of them out there. And in today's video, I'll be giving 10 short amazing fantasy books in my opinion. And hopefully you will find this enjoyable as a palate cleanser, or maybe if you want to read something short and satisfying in the fantasy genre. I have posted a video like this, I think about a year or 2 years ago. So I think it's good to revisit and give recommendations that haven't been mentioned. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it for the introduction. Now let's begin from the shortest up to the biggest one. So for the first one, I will recommend 2 books at once, and both of them are from Rob J. Hayes. This is Demon and also Deathless. Demon is about 60,000 words long and Deathless is about 70,000 words long. So yeah, when you add them both, well, you have about 130,000 words long. So that's still about average size fantasy novel, or short really, because I do think 180,000 words long, that's the average size for fantasy novel for me anyway. But anyway, back to the point. Yeah, 60,000 words long and 70,000 words long. And this is some books in the God Eater saga. The first books in the 3 series in the God Eater saga, Demon and also Deathless. They are both first book of a series, and they all take part inside this huge universe that Rob J. Hayes is creating right now. The main novel is Herald, but I think Herald is about 220 or 200,000 words long. So Herald alone is bigger than Demon and Deathless, and I haven't read Herald yet. The plan is to read Herald this month or next month, but Demon and Deathless, I can definitely vouch that they are both amazing. One of the things that have been missing from my experience lately is the feeling of intensity and feeling of being terrified for the characters in the fantasy books that I read. And Demon and Deathless, both of them in their own way, grant that for me. And yeah, I strongly recommend you to pick them up. Although Rob J. Hayes recommend reading Herald first and then Deathless and then Demon, I went into it backward from his recommendation. I started Demon first and then Deathless, and well, finally I'm going to read Herald. But it worked really well for me, and I will recommend that reading order for you as well. I don't think it is possible to pick up Demon and Deathless yet unless you back the Kickstarter campaign from Rob J. Hayes about the hardcover edition of the God Eater saga. But Demon and Deathless, both of them will be released, I think, in the month of August and September. So yeah, not long from now, only about a month and 2 months from now, and then you will be able to read them. And yeah, strongly recommended. That I gave both of them 4.5 out of 5 stars rating. I love Deathless even more. I think it is one of my favorite books of the year. And then the next book that I would recommend, this one belongs in this, I guess, science fiction or dystopian category, and it is a classic, Parable of the Sower by Octavia Butler. I have read only this one. This is the first book in the Earthsea duology. I haven't read the second book yet. I remember back then when I was reading Parable of the Sower and also, I think, Hyperion, I was in a very big sci-fi reading slump. Yeah, sci-fi genre slump. I think that's more precise. But yeah, I was in a big sci-fi slump, and even with that in mind, I still end up enjoying both Hyperion and also Parable of the Sower very much. Parable of the Sower is a very harrowing read. It somehow felt so prophetic despite it being published like more than 30 years ago now, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, this is not for the weak of heart. Everything that happened in this book, it is brutal, and somehow I think one of the things that made this book so terrifying is how real the events that the characters face. And from what I have heard, the second book in the duology, is even worse. Parable of the Talents. Yeah, I heard some of the events there is even darker compared to Parable of the Sower, but there is a lot of food for thoughts from reading this book. And yeah, I do highly recommend it, assuming that you are in the right reading mood for this kind of novel. But the word count for Parable of the Sower is 100,000 words long. So it is not a big book at all. And then after that, let's move on to the next recommendation. This will be for Priest of Bones by Peter McLean, the first book in the War for the Rose Throne series, or one of my favorite series. And well, I cannot deny that the first book is definitely super reminiscent of, what's the name of the series? Oh, Peaky Blinders. Yeah, the first season of the TV show Peaky Blinders. This book, Priest of Bones, is pretty much like a novelization of that first season. But what made Priest of Bones better than the first season of Peaky Blinders, in my opinion, is the narration. Yeah, the voice of Thomas Piety. Even the name of the character is very similar to Thomas Shelby. But yeah, Thomas Piety's narration is really one of the best in the fantasy, in my opinion. It is just so distinct, and it gets better and better with each book. Priest of Bones is actually, I think, the weakest of the entire series. It's either that or the third book, but I still end up giving them both very positive rating. I think a 4 or 4.5 stars rating. So yeah, I do recommend this, especially if you are in need of a short fantasy book, short grim dark fantasy book to read. This is a good one, really good one. And hey, if you want to see me being killed off brutally, I am there in the third book, Praise of Gallows. So yeah, that might be something to look forward to. The word count for this one is 107,000 words long. And the same, I guess, for the next book that I'm going to recommend. This is for something a bit much more lighthearted, and this is Tress of the Emerald Sea by Brandon Sanderson. I only recommend first book of a series or standalone in this list. I should have probably mentioned that in the introduction of this video, but because of that, this is one of my recommendations, Tress of the Emerald Sea, because I know that many people said that you have to read so many books in the Cosmere before reading Tress of the Emerald Sea. I don't think that is the case. I think it is possible to read Tress of the Emerald Sea without any knowledge of the Cosmere. You will benefit, of course, from having knowledge of who Hoyt is and also the Cosmere, the Investiture. Of course, you will benefit from that. But I don't think it is a must to know all of them before reading Tress of the Emerald Sea. I know for a fact many people have actually started reading Brandon Sanderson from starting this book, from Tress of the Emerald Sea. It is lighthearted, it is fun, and not gonna lie, some of the jokes definitely did not land it on me, but there is a special charm about Tress of the Emerald Sea, and the illustrations behind this special edition by Howard Lyon, they definitely elevated my experience of reading Tress of the Emerald Sea, the first of the Secret Project novel by Brandon Sanderson. And speaking of Secret Project, well, the next one that I want to recommend is another secret project by Brandon Sanderson. Of course, it is not the second book, The Frugal Wizard. It is not that. I'm not a fan of that one. So this is Yumi and the Nightmare Painter by Brandon Sanderson. Yumi and the Nightmare Painter has even more barriers compared to Tress of the Emerald Sea, according to many Cosmere fans. I get what they're trying to say, but I will state this is a very powerful standalone novel. It is my favorite standalone novel from Brandon Sanderson. Yumi and the Nightmare Painter is inspired from Hikaru no Go manga or anime, and then Final Fantasy X and also Kimi no Nawa, and it is reflected very nicely in the book. I love Nikaro, or Painter, and also I love Yumi. There is a strong Korean and also Japanese inspiration in this book. And I think Brandon Sanderson picked the right artist. Alia Chen is one of the best artists of all time, in my opinion, and her artwork definitely made this book even stronger. It has such a lasting impression on me. One of the reasons is because of the illustrations from Alia Chen. But yeah, I love everything about Yumi and the Nightmare Painter. But here's the thing. Many people will tell you, you will have to read all books in the Stormlight archive first before reading this one. I disagree with that. Because, well, some said that reading this will spoil your experience, some of your experience from reading the Stormlight archive. That will not happen. It is very unlikely that will happen because the things that you read here, they will be too vague if you don't have any information about the Stormlight archive. And also, by the time you get to the point that is vaguely mentioned in Yumi and the Nightmare Painter, I think you might have forgotten about that one. I know I will. If I haven't read the Stormlight archive yet when I was reading Yumi and the Nightmare Painter, I know that will happen to me by the time I get to that particular book. So yeah, this is my favorite standalone novel by Brandon Sanderson. The word count is slightly bigger compared to Tress of the Emerald Sea. It is about 113,000 words long. But yeah, it is still very readable. It is short and also, well, I loved it very much. And now moving on to the next recommendation. This is for a book that hasn't been released yet. This will be released next month, and it is one of my contender for my favorite debut of the year. Favorite fantasy debut of the year, and it is The Dollmakers by Lynn Buchanan. Yeah, I love this one. It is very engaging, character-driven, and it was very easy to feel invested in the character's journey, even though the main character is intentionally written to be very slappable. The main character here, one of the main characters, Shan, apprentice Shan, she is very, very selfish, annoying, infuriating for pretty much about the first half of the Dollmakers. There is a good development, rewarding development waiting behind that, but yeah, you will have to be patient. I will understand your feeling when you want to slap this character because I felt the same. But at the same time, I also cannot help but feel super invested and engrossed in reading the Dollmakers. It was such an engaging reading experience. I read this in the month of February, but I still cannot forget about it. It is a good one, and I look forward to the release next month. If possible, I would like to invite Lynn Buchanan to my YouTube channel next month. Let's see whether that's possible or not. But yeah, please put this on your radar if you love character-driven fantasy, engaging narration, and unique magic system. This one is marketed as a standalone novel, and it certainly worked as one, but I have no doubt there will be more books in this series. It is certainly a series. I'm not sure whether those will be a standalone novel, maybe this is a series of standalone novels, or maybe it is a continuation directly from the Dollmakers, but there will be one or two for sure. So yeah, I recommend this one. This book is about the same size as far as word count goes as Yumi and the Nightmare Painter. I think 114,000 words long. Moving on to recommendation number 8. This one is clocked in at 118,000 words long. This is The Crown Tower by Michael J. Sullivan. This is the first book in the Radia Chronicles series. And well, I read this one after I finished reading the Radia Revelations, so that's something to consider. But you know what? I think as far as writing goes, The Crown Tower is more well written compared to the first book in the Radia Revelations by far. The Theft of Swords Omnibus, yeah, The Crown Tower is so much more well written compared to the Theft of Swords Omnibus. And I think Michael J. Sullivan acknowledged this too himself. The Crown Tower tells the origin story of the famous duo, Royce and Hadrian. Royce and Hadrian is one of the most beloved duo in the fantasy genre, especially for those who have read the Radia Revelations, and that's very understandable. They're one of my favorite duo as well. And it feels really good to be reading the origin story of how they actually met each other. The Crown Tower actually begins about more than 10 years before the events of the Radia Revelations. Michael J. Sullivan himself recommended readers to start the Radia Revelations first before reading the Radia Chronicles, but I do think it is possible to read the Crown Tower first without reading the Radia Revelations. But well, generally speaking, I always recommend trying publication order first, but if you find the writing in Theft of Swords a bit unsatisfying, you can try reading The Crown Tower. But yeah, I love this book and this series. The 5th book in the Rydia Chronicles, Drumindor, will be released this year, and I am so looking forward to reading that. I only have 2 recommendations left, and both of them are at 120,000 words long. And the first one is The Tainted Cup by Robert Jackson Bennett. Love this one very much. It was incredibly entertaining. If you love Sherlock Holmes, you love Attack on Titan, you love Knives Out, please give The Tainted Cup a read. Yeah, I think this will be the first book out of many books in the Shadow of the Leviathan series. And I have always been a fan of Robert Jackson Bennett. I think he's the kind of author that, I always say this, but it is true. He's the kind of author that can blend multiple genres seamlessly, incredibly well. And yeah, this is another example. This is a murder mystery epic fantasy novel, and I love this one very much. I cannot believe I forgot to include this in my list of favorite books of the year last year. I will have to fix that this year. No matter the cost, I have to do it, okay? I think it is a travesty that I did not mention The Tainted Cup, but this is one of my favorite books last year, and I still cannot wait to read the next book as soon as possible. And as you can probably expect from a murder mystery novel, this one definitely worked really well as a standalone novel. And yeah, it is the first book of a series, but it will feel satisfying by the time you get to it. But I think if you end up enjoying this, like me, you will be craving the next book as soon as possible. I cannot wait to read the duo of Dean and Anna again. And finally, the last book that I'm going to recommend today for short and amazing fantasy book, this is Blood Over Brighthaven by M.L. Wang. Blood Over Brighthaven is another standalone novel from M.L. Wang, the author behind The Sword of Kaigen, my favorite standalone fantasy novel of all time. And this is another amazing one. This is dark academia at its best. I think it's even better than Babel by R.F. Kuang. But yeah, this one has been picked up by traditional publisher, and I think this hardcover edition somehow has become a rare edition, and I'm really glad to have it. I think the release date for Blood Over Brighthaven, the traditional published edition, is in the month of October, and I expect that edition to be even better compared to this one, because usually they will receive, this traditional published edition, they will receive another round of editing, and that will enhance the quality of the narrative. But this one, I cannot recommend it highly enough. I have posted a full spoiler-free review of Blood Over Brighthaven on my YouTube channel. So if you want to know my full thoughts about it, feel free to check that one out. I think I posted it last year. Yeah, last year. But yeah, highly recommended. Love this one very much. I gave this a 5 out of 5 stars, of course. And yeah, that's my 10 recommendations for short and amazing fantasy books. I cannot recommend these 10 books highly enough. Depending on your reading mood and preference, I think you will find a lot to like within these 10 books. But yeah, that's pretty much my recommendations for today. That's it for today's video. Do let me know what you think about the books that I mentioned today. And of course, please let me know what would be your short books recommendation, short fantasy books recommendations for those of us who are in need of a great and satisfying palate cleanser or great and satisfying short fantasy books. And yeah, that's it for me today. As always, thank you so much for watching, and thank you for your support. Bye bye. Lastly, I want to say thank you so much once again to all my patrons who keep on supporting me.